Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Raquel, and in this video we are going to be doing a fantasy reading vlog. Now that it's fall, officially, I am in the mood for nothing else besides fantasy, particularly fantasy romance, and so I don't want to read anything else. So we're going to be reading some fantasy together, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, we are starting with A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. I read the A Court of Thorns and Roses series last year, like last summer, and then I reread them all again around November timeframe, and got all the way through A Court of Frost and Starlight. Planned on reading this in January and just never got to it. And I think it's not that I didn't love it, because like it's one of my favorite series ever. I think I just didn't love the idea of reading from a perspective that wasn't Feyre and Rhysand. Like, I love them so much. They are like such a part of my heart and soul. And reading a book from Nesta kind of scares me because I don't really like her. Like, I've never really liked her in the books before. And so reading this book, I'm worried I'm not going to like it, and I'm worried it's going to ruin the series for me. But everyone tells me that it's good. It's one of the best books in the series. You'd learn to love Nesta. So we will see. Hi, good morning. I am here to do a little check-in for A Court of Silver Flames. I'm on page 116. I'm about to start chapter 10, and I have some thoughts. So I don't know how I'm feeling about this book. It doesn't feel the same for me as ACOTAR did. The first, 4 books or whatever. The first 3 books. It doesn't feel the same. Why is it in third person? I don't know. The other books were in first person, and that is just so much better. And then also, I still just don't like Nesta. This was my worst fears confirmed, that I just don't like her. I don't know why she's such a biatch. Like, I think that's being explained why she acts the way she does. It's a coping mechanism for some PTSD that she has from the war. Also, by the way, if you have not read the first 3 major books in this series, maybe don't listen to this part, because I'm not going to give any spoilers away for this book, but like, it's hard to talk about A Court of Silver Flames without having talked about the other previous books. So with that being said, after the war, Nesta has some PTSD, especially after like being in the cauldron and things like that, and she just doesn't really know how to cope. And so the way that she deals with it is just to push everyone away. And she has just been drowning herself in like gambling and drinking and hooking up with guys. And, that's the way that she deals. And in the 116 pages that I have read so far, not a lot has happened other than Feyre is kind of just like, I'm over it. I'm over your bad behavior. And things are going to start changing. You are going to be going to train with Cassian. And after that, you're going to work in the library, and you're going to get your crap together, because I'm done dealing with your shit. And that's probably what she needs, but she is so incredibly stubborn. She goes to train with Cassian and then doesn't do anything. She's like, I'm here. That's my only commitment. I'm here. I don't have to do anything else. And she's just such a brat. And like, I don't know how I'm going to end up liking her. And I really miss Feyre and Rhysand. Like, we see them a little bit in this book, and I just miss them so much, and I want to see what they're doing. Like, I miss them, and I don't know, I just feel like it's actually going by really slow. I don't feel like anything is happening. This book is like huge. It's almost 800 pages. So why are we moving so slowly? Like, why don't you just condense your book? Instead of being 800 pages, maybe make it like 400 or 500 pages and make no like slow bits. That would be great, because yeah, I'm having a hard time getting into it. I don't know. I'll let you know more when I get a little further. Okay, I'm on page 201 of A Court of Silver Flames, and I'm changing my mind. I'm pretty into the story right now. I still don't love Nesta, but I can really see that her character is developing. I really like Cassian. I really like the story that we get. Like, we get more information about the Illyrians. We get a little bit more history of the Bat Boys. I'm pretty into it now. Like, I'm really liking it a lot more. And it feels like an SJM book again. Like, I feel back in the world. It just took me a little while with this one to get back into it. But there's a lot of dialogue between Nesta and Cassian, which I appreciate. And I take it back. I'm liking it. Hi, doing a check-in. I am on page 400, so just right over halfway. And I think the plot is finally starting to pick up because, like, outside of Nesta's character development and learning a little bit about Cassian's history and the Illyrians and the Bat Boys, like, not a lot of plot has really happened yet. And I think I just in this recent chapter kind of got to the start of it. And I think for me personally, I feel like Sarah J Maas's books are always like insane in the last half. Like, I remember reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, like the first book in the series, and thinking the first half of that book was like fine, like okay, but the last half was so good. And so I feel like it's probably going to start really picking up plot wise, I'm assuming. But I think I can definitely say I no longer hate Nesta. I don't love her, but I don't hate her, and I understand her a whole lot better. And I really like her relationship with Cassian. I'm a big fan of spice in books. Like, I love my smutty romance books, but I actually feel like it like disrupts how good this book is. Like, I feel like it would be better if it was like left out a little bit more than it is. I never thought I would say that, but yeah, I do feel like there might be a little too much spice, and it's kind of taking away like the magic of the story for me. Otherwise, really good. I will let you know when I finish it. I'm here with my final thoughts for A Court of Silver Flames. I'm still kind of speechless. I just finished this. I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to start out with the negatives. I still think this book is way too long. This is nearly 800 pages. It could have definitely been like 500 pages. I think maybe 600 pages. Could have definitely been shorter. I also think, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but I definitely think that there was way too much spice. I love spice in a book. I love my smutty romances, but like it really took away from the plot of this book. Like, when I go into a fantasy story, I really want there to be the plot. Like, I'm there for the plot of the fantasy to see what's going on. And I felt like there were so many parts in the beginning of this book, like especially up to the 50% mark, where like nothing was happening. Like all they did was talk about the plot, talk about what might happen, but like nothing really happened. You get like one really cool scene around the halfway mark, and then I feel like it goes back to just not really much of the plot happening. Like, there wasn't really a ton of like action as far as like the villain and the plot and stuff, like the majority of this book. It definitely was more focused around Nesta's character development. I think those are my biggest 3 complaints. Way too long, too much spice, and lots of moments where there wasn't a whole lot happening plot-wise. And now for the positives. Sarah J Maas just has a way with storytelling, and it doesn't matter what book I pick up from her, it makes me feel something. And this was no different. I think I started this book kind of hating Nesta, finding her really irritating. This book didn't really try to change your mind about that. It doesn't try to make you like her. Like, I think by the end of this book, I did like her. But like, I just learned to understand her. I learned about, you know, all of her trauma. Like, even before the war, there's a lot more to her story and why she's so standoffish, like why she's such a bitch to everyone, and, you know, why she's so afraid of letting anyone in, and how easy it is to just push people away because that's just easier. And you just really learn to understand her and to watch her go from someone who is filled with such like self-loathing and just feels like the world would be better off if she were gone, if she were dead, and to just be like completely drowning in her misery and her trauma, and to what she is at the end of this book is just this very strong like warrior who becomes like this selfless person who would, you know, destroy the world with the people that she loves. I think the journey from the beginning to this person that she is now at the end of this was just amazing. And it makes me feel like maybe 750 pages was worth that. And I think that Cassian is the perfect guy for her. He doesn't coddle her, he doesn't baby her, because that's not what Nesta needs. Nesta responds to strength, and Cassian is the general of the army of the Night Court, and he just is there for her. He takes whatever she throws at him and he still is there, and he's resilient, and he just shows her a really good example of what love looks like. And I very much loved getting a really good insight into the Bat Boys and the Illyrians and some of the history and stuff that, you know, we didn't get to delve into too much into the other books. I think that was so like cool to see. I love this world so much. I loved seeing Rhysand and Feyre and like, not giving anything away, but like how happy they are and like just all of the developments in their life, seeing the inner circle, seeing some possibilities for Asriel and like his love interests, maybe, I don't know. Seeing all that was just so cool. And the last 100 pages of this book, I forgot that time existed. Like I literally didn't even, I was like outside of my body reading this. Like I just completely forgot about the rest of the world and was so absorbed into the story. And you know, that's another thing, the female friendship in here with Nesta and her friends that she finds, like this other found family beyond the inner circle, was just like so great to see. And I don't know, there's a lot of things I just really loved about this. There are a couple things that like irritated me a little bit, but overall this was just such a great part of this series. It's not my favorite, like I will always have a special place in my heart for Rhysand and Feyre's story, and I don't think there's a book out there that can top A Court of Mist and Fury, but this is really good and definitely a great addition, and I decided to go with a 4.5 stars. And the next book that I've decided to read in this fantasy reading vlog is Divine Rivals. I've heard everybody and their mother talk about this. I feel like this is, at least for me, on my TikTok and my YouTube and my Instagram, this is the only book I'm seeing like everywhere. It feels like Fourth Wing all over again, where everybody on the internet is talking about this book, and I'm so freaking excited. Okay, I'm here for my first check-in with Divine Rivals. So a little bit about what this is about. I think the only thing I knew about this going into it is that there's like warring gods and there's like these magical typewriters where these two rival journalists go back and forth, and I think that's a pretty good, accurate synopsis for this book. I will say it's moving a little bit slower than I thought it was going to, but I like it. I think that Rebecca Ross's writing is really good, and I think this was a really good choice for fall. It does feel like fall for me, and I don't know that it's ever really set a specific time period, because this place, you know, is actually a fictional place that this book is taking place in, but I'm picturing like 1930s, 1940s or something like that. I'm not really sure if that's accurate, but that's kind of what I'm picturing, and it seems like it's during the fall season. And we have Iris and Roman, and they are journalists working for this paper company, and all we know about it seems like the fantasy element of this is very muted. We know that there's these two gods that are at war, and there's like the humans have gotten themselves involved in it, and some humans are fighting for one side while some humans are fighting for the other. So Iris has a brother who has gone to fight in the war for the goddess, and she is working for this paper. Her brother is kind of missing. Like, he had promised to write her. He hasn't written to her, and it's been a really long time, and she's really just not sure what happened. If he had passed away, if he's missing, if something bad's happened to him, or if he's just in a situation where he can't really talk to her. But she has heard nothing from him since he left for the war. And their mother has just turned to alcohol and drinking, and has definitely abandoned all duties of being a mother. And because of that, and because of her love of writing, Iris ended up like dropping out of high school to join this newspaper company to write articles, and like that's what she had always wanted. That was her dream anyway. And so, you know, it kind of worked out. But she has this rival, Roman, and they're both kind of going after the same job. They both want to be a columnist, and they have like a cute little rivalry going on. And then when it comes to the letters, she has this old typewriter in her house that she is writing letters to her brother, and just kind of putting them in her wardrobe. Like, I mean, there's no way to give them the letters to her brother, but she just wants to get out her thoughts. And so she starts just writing all of these letters. Well, one day, it's almost like magic that someone responds, and there's another letter that comes out of the wardrobe, and it's like, hey, I'm not your brother. And she's like kind of embarrassed, like, I just poured my heart out for like the last several weeks talking about all of my feelings, and someone's like listening. Someone's reading my letters. And so she ends up kind of having some discourse with this other person. Now, I don't think this is really a spoiler. I feel like anything you learn in the first like 50 pages isn't really that big of a spoiler, but the person on the other side that is responding is Roman, the rival. But she doesn't know that. He knows it's her, but she doesn't know it's him. And so he is just trying to comfort her in a very difficult time for her. She's kind of going through a lot right now, and he's just trying to be comforting, and they kind of find this like easy friendship in their letters. And then, you know, he sees her at work and they have this rivalry, but you know, he obviously knows more about her life than she realizes. And so he just sees that, you know, she's just such a tough person because he knows what's really going on in her life and he knows her feelings, but you know, she hides it so well, and she has this exterior of like this tough, you know, I'm going to be a columnist personality. So it's moving a little bit slow, and I was kind of surprised to see that, at least so far, the fantasy elements of this aren't super prominent in the story. It definitely seems like more of a workplace romance to me so far, with like a few magical elements here and there. But yeah, so far so good. I definitely really like her writing. I think it's very atmospheric and just giving me like really good like fall vibes, like slightly like a historical fall type of vibe. So I will let you know when I get about halfway. Hi. So I meant to update you when I got halfway through with this book, but I just kind of kept flying past that. So I am on page 253 and have about 100 pages left of this book, and I really like it. I think it took me a little while to get into it, but I am very into it now. Don't want to give away too much of the plot in case you want to read this, but I can't remember exactly what I told you about this book before because it's actually been a couple of days. I was really busy this week with work and just didn't have a lot of time to read, but I know I told you the kind of the gist of it. We do get to see a little bit of the front lines of this war, and it reminds me so much of World War I in so many ways. I see so many parallels. So they have the like trench warfare where there's these massive trenches that everyone's in, and there's like really terrible living conditions. It's flooding, there's rats, everyone's hungry, you have to be really quiet, and it just reminds me so much of what World War I was like. But I also see the parallel in the fact that, you know, World War I was somebody else's war. Like so many people fought in that war around the world, and kind of for like such a silly reason. Like so many people died for someone else's problem. And I kind of feel like that with this. Like, you know, you hear about these two gods that are warring, but you never really see them, or at least I haven't seen them yet. It's like, you know that they exist, you know that they're fighting, but you don't see them. So it just feels like somebody else's problem, and everybody in the world is getting involved in these two people's issue with each other. And I don't know, it just reminds me a lot of World War I. It just feels like a historical fiction book, like centered around a war, with very romantic letters and you know, some friendships and like everything that goes around dealing with a war and how that affects people and places. There are very mild, minute fantasy elements thrown in, but I really like this. I feel like it's so fast now and it's really easy, and I just can't wait to find out what happens. I will let you know when I finish it, which will probably be today sometime for sure. Hi. So I just finished Divine Rivals this morning, and I thought it was really good. I really, really liked this book a lot. I think you just gotta go into this book knowing that there's not a lot of fantasy in it. I think that's what threw me off. I wanted this to be a fantasy. I'm in a fantasy mood. I was under the impression that there was a lot of fantasy in this, and that's really not the case. Go in this with the mindset of it's a historical romance with like a little tiny inkling of fantasy, and I think you'll have better expectations. But overall, I really liked this. The ending was kind of crazy. I definitely want to read the next one. I don't know if the hype was really worth it for me, but I did very much like this. I do want to continue, and I think I'm going to settle on a 4-star for this. The next and final book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog is The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I've been seeing this like for the last year. Like everybody loves this book, and I have been waiting for fall season to read it. I feel like anything to do with vampires, I don't know, I want to read that in the fall. So this is the perfect time to read it. I'm super excited. I've been looking forward to reading this all year. So I will let you know when I've read a little bit of it. Okay, I just got to page 105 of this book, and it's really holding my interest. It really is like Hunger Games with vampires. I've heard that. I've heard this book be described that way, and I think that's like super accurate. All I really know is that there are a couple of different like races of vampires, and the main character, Oriah, is a human girl that was kind of taken from her homelands that had been like kind of destroyed in the past, and she was like kind of like one of the only survivors. And so the vampire king, Vincent, had taken her kind of as his own child and has raised her and protected her and taught her how to fight and taught her how to like kind of hold her own against vampires. So she feels very like she doesn't belong anywhere. Like she doesn't feel like she really belongs with humans because she's just different from them. She was raised differently than them, and she doesn't really belong with vampires because she's obviously human and has so many more weaknesses. But we find that there are these different like races of vampires that we discussed briefly, and there is this big like tournament held every 100 years, and all you know is whoever wins gets this prize from Nyaxia, which is this like goddess, like the mother of vampires kind of thing. By this point in the book, we've already seen like the first trial, and we've met a few other characters, but she is very human, very vulnerable, and she is really not going to make it very far until she starts allying with someone. But like, how do you trust someone who wants to kill you, who wants to eat you? So it's really holding my attention. I'm really liking it. I do really love the writing in this. I think it's really good. And yeah, I'll let you know whenever I get about halfway. Okay, I've made it to a little over halfway through this book. I'm on page 251. And I am really liking this book. We've gotten to see a couple of trials now, and it's a well-known fact that one of the trials, known as like the Half Moon trial, requires you to have like allies. Like you have to ally with somebody else in the competition, which is hard because you all want to kill each other. There's only one winner, and there's already kind of like some like racial tension. Like I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of different types of races of vampires, and so they already don't like each other, and they're all competing against each other, and there can only be like one winner. So it's not easy to trust somebody enough to ally, because as soon as you ally for this one particular trial, then you immediately turn on each other, and like when is that going to be exactly? So Oriah specifically is a human and has no trust for vampires in general. Like she can't even trust her own, like the vampires that she has grown up with, because they all want to eat her. So she doesn't really trust anyone. There's this one particular vampire that we see, his name is Rain, and we saw him a little bit, we've seen him a little bit throughout the story. He happened to be like right next to her in the first trial. They seem to be able to work well together, so they kind of very reluctantly, mostly on her part, she was very reluctant to want to ally with him, but he was very like, we could ally, this would be great. And she's like, does not trust him. He has another friend named Misha, who's also a vampire. One thing that we notice about Rain and Misha is that they're kind of just very different than other vampires. They act very differently, and there's just something about them that seems very different than any other vampire that Oriah has ever encountered. And she very reluctantly, pretty much because she has no choice, allies with these two vampires for the upcoming trial. And so we get to see them learning to try to trust each other a little bit, and how they train together, and just kind of developing a trust where they are kind of cordial with each other. And that is like very difficult for Oriah, for really good reason. At this point, where I just stopped is us starting on the third trial, the one that requires allies. I don't know what the trial is yet, so I'm really excited to see like what happens. But I gotta say, the love story in this, I think is gonna be so incredible. Like, I just very much appreciate a true slow burn. Like, I don't know if this is a spoiler, maybe it is, but it's very clear that Rain is going to eventually be a love interest. Like, I mean, if you haven't seen that all over the internet, like, that would be surprising. But I mean, this is marketed as a fantasy romance, even though so far there is no romance yet, like at all. So halfway through, nothing. But I actually love that. I love that we have these very like reluctant allies that are slowly forming a friendship. Like, I love how slow it feels because it feels real. It feels natural. Like, Oriah, a human who, you know, has been very wary of vampires her whole life. Like, how would she go to falling in love with one? That would probably take a lot of time and a lot to work through. And so I feel like they are giving the time necessary for that to maybe sometime develop later. So I really like that, and I'm really like emotionally connected. Oriah's like father figure, Vincent, the vampire king, I like that he seems very layered. Seems like he's probably a great villain, but then he's also like very caring and just obviously loves her so much and would do anything for her. Like, he truly treats her as a daughter. I don't know where the story is going to go with him because there's a lot to his character and I just don't really know where it's going to go, and I think that that's cool. Like, I like not knowing what is going to happen with Vincent. And then, you know, outside of the competition, there's other things kind of going on. There's a potential rebellion, and you know, we don't know who's rebelling, but there's like some attacks. And I just really like this story, and I find that I'm flying through it. It's really easy to read. I really like the characters. I feel, I don't know, I love the writing, and I'm just like really into this right now. I will let you know when I finish it what I think. Okay, I just finished this book, and I knew a long time ago that this was going to be a 5-star read for me. This book is amazing. It's so good. The ending was just like twist after twist after twist that like I just was not expecting. And the politics, like the world, like all the crazy stuff that's going on, like with just the world, was enough for me to give this a 5-star. But this is like one of the best fantasy romances I've ever read. This is nearly on par with Feyre and Rhysand. Almost. Like, it might be there. I don't know. I obviously need to sit and think with it for a little bit, but like, this is so good. This is like the perfect romance story. Very reluctant allies to friends to potentially not trusting each other again. I'm so excited to read the next one. Like, I just have to know what's gonna happen, and like, it almost like broke my heart a couple of times. Like, I felt myself tearing up. I thought that I was gonna cry like at one point. This gave me all the feels. I was super into it. I was like, you know, gasping and like audibly freaking out multiple times when I was reading this. And yeah, I absolutely loved this. This was so good. And that's it for the books that I read. So just to recap, I started with A Court of Silver Flames and I gave it a 4.5. But like, don't believe anything I say. When I'm reading a book immediately after I finish it, that is like not to be taken seriously. Upon reflection, really thinking about this book, the ending was amazing, and I think there were some really great things about it, but overall, this just does not compare to the rest of the series for me, and so I ended up settling on a 4-star for this. Still very good, obviously part of my favorite series, but just not comparable to the others, so 4-star. Next, I read Divine Rivals, and I stuck with my rating of a 4-star for this. I did enjoy it. It's just not exactly what I was expecting, and I don't know that the hype was really there for me, but still a very enjoyable read, and I will definitely consider reading the next one. And lastly, The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I'm still thinking about this. It's been days since I finished this, and honestly, like, I am still thinking about it just as much. I'm actually just about to pick up the little novella, Six Scorched Roses. I can't even wait. I'm so excited. And then immediately after I finish that, I'm probably gonna go ahead and start on the second book in this series, The Ashes and the Starcursed King, because I'm just like loving this world. So I stand by my 5-star for this. This was amazing. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.